Sure. The first chart I sent was basically, it's a very busy chart. So I apologize if it's tough to read. But basically, the question on my mind is volatility rich or cheap right now? And unfortunately, from looking at the chart, the answer is both. And it really depends on your point of view. You've got basically the S&P trading with an implied vol of about 11. And you may say, well, that seems very low. And relative to the VIX, it is, because the construction is different, but just bear with me on that one. So the VIX and the implied volatility on the SPX are not always exactly the same, depending on which options you're looking at. But we'll use an 11. And so what you would say would be, well, if you're looking at short-term realized volatility, historical volatility, the 7-day is 5.5, or the 20-day is 8.5. And well, so if you buy, so at 11, the vol's kind of expensive. If you look back and see the 60-day at 21, which still encompasses the December and January bouncing around, or even the longer-term vol, 200-day moving average of 200-day implied vol of 16 and change. Well, 11 seems kind of cheap. So you really, this will be a theme you'll see, is I think we're really at kind of a crossroads here. Is vol rich or cheap? Is the market rich or cheap? And I think you can make a good case for almost anything right now. And I think that's kind of the problem.
Steve, I have to ask you then. It's a simple question from this perspective. Like, in my mind, at least from what I've been sharing with people, is that I did not, if this was a bear market and this is a bear market rally, I was highly suspect that we were going to see volatility normalize back to the pre-crash level, where we were down in the VIX, down in the 10 to 12 level on the downside. I thought that we were going to have a little bit of a higher sustained vol, which to me, I would think that therefore there isn't too much Vega risk in taking on options right now. But do you have a different perspective on? Do you think that we can normalize all the way back to like September levels from last year?
Well, first of all, I don't think September levels of last year were all that normal. The normal historically is sort of the mid-teens, not the low teens. I think we got lulled into a situation where we accepted low teens or even less on the VIX as being the normal state of affairs. Historically, that's not really the case. Now, I will say that I did think this was a bear market rally at first, and I am on record somewhere. If you go through my tweets, you'll see somewhere that I was quoted as saying I thought that vols would normalize in the high to mid-teens. And
right. I was in your camp, to be honest.
That's wrong. Yeah. So we agreed, and this rally was stronger, I think, than I anticipated. At this point, it's not a bear market rally. I don't know what to make of the decline, other than to say maybe in hindsight it looks just like an anomaly. But that was one hell of an anomaly.
Yeah, no, that was pretty crazy. Now I'm just going to give you a chart here. Just this is the traditional VIX chart using candlesticks, and we can see at least this VIX chart is down in the 13.5 level on this CBOE index. I mean, the levels that in my mind, that were all these major lows are not that far away, are they?
No.
Go
ahead.
No. It's I'm just curious. Like, I mean, are we heading all the way back down there?
I would have said no. Now I'm less certain of that call. One thing I did learn over the years is you have to be able to admit when you're wrong and not dig into a position too much. I think some of the other stuff we'll look at makes me somewhat uncertain. The one thing I would say here is, and I've said this multiple times over the past few years, when it gets down to these levels, it's really treacherous for the average trader to try to short volatility, because your risk reward is completely skewed.
Right.
What are you going to make? 2 points maybe? And what can you lose? 5, 6, 10? You lose those in a day and a half.
There's no more asymmetry in that.
Yeah, so it's a very asymmetrical trade right now. And so what I would say would be, if you think the vol's too high, well, then don't buy it, but be very careful about trading it from the short side.
Kev, what's your thinking? Do you have an opinion?
Well, I think that I think Steve's point about whether VIX is going back to the low levels that we saw kind of in the past couple of years is interesting. I wonder if too many people were expecting that bear market rally and were in your camp, and I wonder if this is just a squeeze, and we're going to see when people finally give up on kind of shorting it is when we're going to actually see vol go. And I'm not sure whether that's going to be 13 and a half, which I see we ticked at today, or whether that's going to be 11 and a half, or don't forget, we kind of threaten single digits at one point.
Yeah. Well, back then, I'm skeptical of that. I mean, that's truly a really interesting period if the market was to once again, like, it's almost like that, all the different vol blowups we've seen, it's almost like the lesson was never learned. Right?
Yeah, but I think back to Steve's point, though, about the realized vol. And Steve cautions against regular folks going out and shorting vol here. And I completely understand that. But if you think about it from an institutional trader, like someone that's actually doing this for a living, if they're shorting, 13 and a half or whatever it is, and it's realizing 10 or 8, then they're making money. And that can go on for a long time, and that can pay for a lot of mistakes. So the difficulty is that if we don't get something that really makes the market move, and if we go kind of like if it gets lulled into this point of it just kind of going back to where we were before, where nothing really exciting is happening, then buying 14s is going to be a losing trade just as much as you caution against selling 14s, but buying 14s in that kind of environment is also dangerous because that's costing you, and you're just getting eaten away by carry all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem right now is, going back to, when you look at this, the short term historicals and what the vols that we're realizing do not pay for your decay at this point. Even if you're very astute at gamma hedging your gamma, it's not there. You're not getting the back and forth, and so you're getting at this sort of stasis. One of the things that I don't really see us one of the reasons I don't really see us getting back to, let's say, threatening single digits is the backdrop is different. I think you had the extraordinary circumstance throughout 2017 and early 2018 of an extremely accommodative Fed, and then an extremely accommodative in the U.S. fiscal policy, and that basically just put this floor under the market. You could argue, was it the Powell? Was the Yellen put there? And I think the market just sort of always saw this wave of money, and it's very easy to buy the dip when you think that there's this wave of money behind you, and therefore, why do you need to hedge? Because if it's not going to go down too far, because every dip is going to be bought and it's just a buying opportunity, well, I don't really need to hedge. That unraveled somewhat in February of 2018. When the vols exploded, because I think the short vol trade became way too crowded, and people got into products they didn't understand. Then people, of course, tend to forget things, and the trade sort of the vol sort of reasserted itself on the downside throughout the summer. We had quite a summer rally, and then it came right back down. Then the vol popped and the market came down again.